Flyers, couple trades. How do they impact the team? Kevin Durso, 97.3 ESPN.com, joins us to break it all down as the Flyers, right now, number 3 in the Metro, just 3 points behind second place Washington. I'll tell you what, nice game against Winnipeg, but it's starting to get the feeling, as I said, the most important thing that happened Thursday night was that not the Sixers got the block from Embiid or that they won the game. It was that the Flyers won that game on the road at Columbus. Kevin Durso joins us now. All right, Kevin, let's bring in, let's take a look, bring you in to take a look at some of these trades and how they will impact this team moving forward, which, the way they played the last couple of weeks, you wonder, do they want to, mess with the continuity they got? But let's start with Derek Grant, now a member of the Flyers, traded from Anaheim to Philly. How does Derek Grant forward fit in?
He's going to be a pretty good fit, I would think, and just in the sense that he's exactly the piece that they were looking to try to acquire. He's a depth forward. He's going to be a fit right in the center position. He can play wing as well, so he's a versatile player, and he can play realistically anywhere between your second line and your fourth line, so he can play in a bunch of different places. So I think he's exactly the type of player they were looking to acquire at this point in the season, and I think he's going to be a really good fit.
Also, Nate Thompson, not Pete Thompson, Nate Thompson, acquired from Montreal for a draft pick as well. So both trades, they didn't give up a whole heck of a lot. But Nate Thompson, another guy, depth, it looks like not as big as a goal scorer here as Derek Grant. But what do we know about how Nate Thompson will fit in?
Well, Nate Thompson is going to give you another veteran presence, and I think that was also part of the goal at the deadline, was to try to bring in some veterans who have been there, who have got the experience, who have got the ability to help provide even more chemistry and more leadership to this team down the stretch in a playoff race. And, Thompson's another guy who I think in this case, it just doesn't cost you a whole lot. It's not even a draft pick from this year. It's a fifth-round draft pick from next year's draft. So it's really nothing that's overly valuable at this given moment. It's not something that you probably have a hard time parting ways with. So I can see the reasoning behind doing this deal as well, just in the sense that, and it's funny, Thompson was the first deal they made, and for a little while it felt like that was just making a move to make a move. But now I'm starting to think that maybe that once you added the other piece and you get Grant in there as well, that's two trades that really have an impact on where the depth of this team is, and you start to see how both players can fit in a whole grouping where you can mix and match these players and find the best combinations to be the best team come playoff time.
I know Thompson good at the penalty kill. He's also a guy on the face-off. You can get stuff like that. What does this say for Derek Grant, Nate Thompson to be the guys they bring in about the potential and health of Nolan Patrick moving forward?
I think it says a lot more than what they're going to give off at this point. They insisted, again, Chuck Fletcher said after the deadline had passed, they insisted that they still hope he's able to play this year. I just don't see it at this stage of the year. And now you got 20 games left. There's just not a whole lot of time. And to me, I think that he's not part of this picture at this point. I think I'm sure there's still hope for it at this point because he is practicing and he is on the ice, but I just don't see how with 20 games left and a lot of them coming up in short order, I just don't see how he's going to get back on the ice and be an impact player. It would certainly make a lot of the other things that have happened around the deadline. It would be another great addition, but I just don't see how it's going to happen.
Yeah, real quick on that, too. Alain Vigneault said last week, we'll get excited when he gets a minor league assignment. This practice stuff now is nothing to get excited about, and I thought that was pretty telling.
For sure it was, and I fully agreed with what he had to say about it, too. I think that if you look at that and you go, yeah, there's really no reason to get all excited about anything with this. Getting on the ice and practicing with his teammates is all well and good, but until he's actually able to play in a few games in a row, that's when you can start to think about him returning to the Flyers lineup with some form of regularity. And again, time is just running out. There's 20 games left in a regular season. I just don't see how you're going to have the time to get him that conditioning he needs to be ready for the lineup for the Flyers.
Kevin, we've talked a lot about the Flyers, about depth and lack of over the past few years. And this season, it seems like there's a potential that they could really have it at the right time. Saturday, the key to the game for me was Scott Lawton's line. He scored himself 2 goals, and he's already tied his career high of goals in a season. So talk about that line and the difference that Lawton alone can make in a playoff push here and hopefully a playoff run.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember doing a spot with PT back in the summer and talking about Lawton and how the fans kind of reacted like, well, that's not the news we wanted to hear because everybody was waiting for Provorov and Konechny to sign. But I insisted that that's a player you need at this point in the year down the stretch. They're so important to have depth players who can do what Lawton's been doing, which is being productive and still filling a very important role. So those guys are very important at this stage of your season, and you need to be able to push through and have guys like that who are willing to sell out too. I think that that's so important that you've got guys who are able to take those hard minutes and block shots and do all the dirty work that comes with it, but then are also productive and take the load off of some of your top players.
Yeah, the Flyers in Saturday's game, Kevin, were outshot 15-4 in the second period, and they held on. They played well. They got stops when they needed to. But do you look at that as more of a negative or a positive that they kind of withheld the storm there?
It kind of was ironic because it felt like a reversal of first period, second period. Usually the first period is the one where they come out a little slow and don't look the best, and then they pick it up in the last two. So they got off to the hot start, and certainly playing from ahead 2-0 from an early point in the game makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I don't know that the second period was an overly big concern because some of those chances that Winnipeg had for most of the period were not quality. They kept them to the outside, and that's a dangerous top six to keep to the outside and not give up a lot of pressure. So I did like that. You kind of did feel like when Winnipeg did finally score a goal late in that period, it was coming sooner or later. So, you don't want to make a habit of that for any extended period of time, but you also don't want to look at the period and think it's a bad period just because they got outshot. They were able to keep a lot of the shots to the outside, and that works out in your favor when you're able to not allow so many dangerous chances.
Flyers have won 3 straight. It seems like they're picking up momentum and possibly clicking, dare I say, at the right time here. And, Travis Konechny a couple of weeks ago said there's just something different about this team this season. And right now it definitely feels that way from where I'm looking, at least. Do you feel the same way, or am I too much of a prisoner of the moment?
No, I think that there is something very different about this team, and I think the biggest difference is not necessarily something that you find on the ice. It's something that you find within the locker room. There's a closeness about this team. Yes, they made 2 roster moves today that do force decisions for even as soon as tomorrow's game, and they both players will be in the lineup tomorrow. So, Joel Farabee goes back to the minors, and it's not just a move on paper. He's going to hang in the minors for a little while, and Connor Bunnaman goes down as well. But other than that, the group stays the same, and you get quality. It's quality players who have been playing for each other. That's what's been probably most important. And going back a year and a half ago, December, all the crazy major changes that they had to make front office wise, coaching wise. This is a team that now seems to have a lot of structure in place. They've got the coach, they've got the GM. They didn't do anything radical today. I thought it was really impressive that Chuck Fletcher said after the deadline was over that he didn't love the rental market, that there was no reason to do something drastic and trade for a rental that was not really an overwhelming rental that puts you over the top. That's a big step as well, because that's not making a move to make a move and just take a guy and sell off a lot of your future, maybe trade a first-round pick or trade a prospect to get a player who is only going to last for another 6 weeks to 2 months potentially. Instead, he focuses on the way the room looks now and the confidence that they've been building over the course of this past month, and they're continually trending in the right direction. So to allow them to move forward with this and to try to finish what they've started so far, I think is a great way to handle this season. And you can look at the off season as a chance to make improvements in areas where maybe you feel like you fall short down the stretch. If you do, I'm not saying set your sights so high in the playoffs, but make the playoffs, based on the way you're trending right now, because you're locked into a spot firmly at this point. Nothing's guaranteed, but you continue to play the way you are, you will be locked into a playoff spot. Then see how you do in the playoffs. Continue from there, and see what happens and maybe address those needs in the offseason and let this team try to finish what they've started.
Yeah, you say firmly. It's funny because there are 3 spots behind Washington that makes it sound firmly, but they're only, 3 spots ahead of a wild card spot, which keeps you in the playoffs, but things can change really quickly. And the one thing that, I was looking at this morning is they've won, 4 out of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 8. So they've been playing so good. You're wondering if they can keep this consistent play up. And Kevin, as you know, this time of the year, one bad night, as the night they had against the Devils back on that Thursday night a couple of weeks ago, where they just didn't play all that well, that kind of game can't happen at this stage of the season. But yet, there's enough games left where you're going to have a bad slip up, and they got Boston coming up, Tampa Bay coming up. They've got at Washington. So they got a brutal stretch coming up here in early March.
Yeah, they do. And there's no taking away from the fact that the schedule has a lot of tough teams on it remaining. It's got teams on it that also played the role of seller this in today's deadline as well. So there's opportunities on both sides to potentially change, to potentially make an impact. It can also go the other way very quickly. So you have to continue to play with the same level of consistency that you did throughout the past month. There's no room for a major slip up. And one of the things the Flyers have done really well in the course of the last, say, 6 weeks is from the time that 6-game road trip ended, they went 1-4-1 on it. They haven't lost back-to-back games since. So not stringing together losses is a huge difference between making waves in the playoff race and then falling right out of it. You see what happened to Columbus, and a few injuries happen, and you lose 6, 7, 8 games in a row. Even if you're earning points by getting to overtime, it's not enough to sustain your playoff spot. So you have to continually put together not just gaining points, but wins as well.
He's Kevin Durso, Kevin_Durso, and you can check him out for all the Flyers as they come down the stretch coming up. We'll have the games for you here tomorrow night against the Sharks, Friday night against the Rangers, and, of course, you can hear those games right here on 97.3 ESPN. Also, Sunday, it's a matinee 12 noon game against the Rangers this weekend, and, of course, Washington on Wednesday night, the 4th. So nice stretch of games coming up. Flyers trying to make that playoff run. And you can read more about the Flyers from Kevin on 97.3ESPN.com. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Kevin Durso, like all guests, appear to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.